Well, I'll say this. One of the reasons I think this is so important, I think it's one of the biggest culture changes that needs to happen and continue to happen in American law enforcement. You know, when I started in 1992, if I saw a traumatic incident, I turned to my partner in 92 and I told my partner, hey, that call kind of screwed me up. My partner would have looked at me and said, dude, you got to suck it up. We got 10 more hours. If I would have said those same words to a lieutenant, that lieutenant would have looked at me in 1992 and said to me, maybe this isn't the right job for you.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why this is so important, because that cannot happen anymore. It is normal trauma that these men and women go through, not just here, but they take those traumas at home, and they have traumas at home. They get involved in alcohol and other things, and we need to make sure that the trauma our officers feel is normalized. There is no human being that needs to see what these officers see without going and asking for help and having someone speak to them if they're having issues.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why we established the wellness unit 14 months ago, exactly for this reason, to ensure that our officers know that it's normal, reach out, we will help you, we'll get you the help we need. It's one of the reasons we started the alcohol rehabilitation program. Mm-hmm. You know, I also understand, I'm a cop. I'm a cop first, I'm a chief second, so I understand the angst officers feel when they think something is going to be helpful from the chief's office. Yeah. Always thinking, okay, there's a catch to this.
Right, right, right.
And I'll tell you this, when we started the alcohol rehabilitation program, man, I didn't even want to know who the names were. Mm-hmm. Okay, I said, we need to get them help if they need help. Right. And we started this program. And you know, this last promotion, there are 2 individuals that went through that program that got promoted after that program. And I say that only, but I always what's so important is because I hope that starts sending the message that they start trusting what we're trying to accomplish to help.
Yeah.
We're very loud about it. You know, we start the wellness unit, and listen, you know there are staffing issues as much as anybody, but I will say this. If something's important to you, you have to put resources to it. Because until you put resources to it, particularly when you're sacrificing resources that you certainly need in other places, you need them just as much in wellness. And it means nothing if you don't put those resources there.
Yeah.
And so we're going to continue to be loud. We need to continue to normalize it to ensure our men and women know it's okay. After this tragedy happened, you know, one of the things I did is I'm at his house, is I turned to Joe King, who's part of our wellness unit. I said, Joe, we need counselors in here tomorrow. I want every special ops unit to go through this. We had our SWAT teams, we had every special ops unit speak to counselors yesterday, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because again, it just has to be continue to be normalized that it's okay. You can be a tough cop. You can be a tough cop taking the worst criminals off the street, and it's okay if something's bothering you.
Yeah, but it's still that same military stigma where it's like, well, I can't complain about this because I will not get that promotion. I'll get that same response that you got in the 90s.
Well,
that's what they're worried about.
I understand that. I completely. Or you know what, they're going to put me on a desk job if I X, Y, and Z or what have you. Listen, we're trying to get our officers better. And again, that example that I give about our alcohol rehabilitation program, when I told people there's no strings attached, and I guarantee you there's cops around going, yeah, we'll see. Well, I think they know there were no strings attached.
Yeah.
I want them to come for help. They need to come for help and understand that, hey man, if you ask for help, you get the help.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect you. We're all going through it. You know, there are individuals, man, in this department, and I'm not even talking about myself, but there's individuals that I care about. From, you know, you have individuals like, and I'll give you an example too. Like not only the officers, you know, you have our motor unit as an example, who do an amazing job. Well, when every officer death, when we do the escorts, they come. It's affecting them. You know, we have our, our honor unit, our honor guard.
Yeah.
You know, our honor guard unit that shows up to every single one and stands stands guard.
And your honor guard is going to help open that event that I was telling you about tomorrow at the Gaylord Texan.
You know, so you look at our motor units as an example, in addition to the officers. You look at our honor guard that responds to all of these, and it may be something that you don't even think about. But those are the people you need to talk to as well, that we need to be proactive and to know it's okay, right? In the period of 12 hours, you know, we had officers and command staff that went from an officer committing suicide to the scene of an officer almost losing his life to 3 violent criminals who carjacked his undercover car, and by the grace of God and by him fighting, we didn't lose an officer that night.
Yeah.
How does it affect them? And so, you know, these are just not normal situations. I understand they're not normal. My command staff understands that they're not normal. My wellness unit understands that, and it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And we have to continue to push that message. And why it's important to me for this, not just here in the city of Dallas, whether other departments in the Metroplex or in the country have wellness units, I know there are services available, and every chief needs to say loud and clear, it is okay to ask for help, and we want to help you. We talk about officer safety.
Yeah.
There's not an officer in this department or an officer anywhere that you would say, all right, would you risk your life for your fellow officer? They'll say absolutely.
Sure.
Well, then, being shoulder to shoulder with them when we have counselors, not rolling your eyes, sitting there and listening, they're practicing officer safety, because I guarantee you there's people in that room that needed it.
Do you foresee a time when the stigma will not be there, that I can still be a tough cop and I can still ask for this help?
Listen, I don't think anything happens overnight. I'm sure there will be some individuals that will always have that stigma.
Sure.
And so, but we just need to reduce it. There's individuals in this profession that simply will never let go of that and will look at other means, often unhealthy means to cope.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But to the ones that will listen, right, particularly, it's a culture change. Sometimes it's moving a ship. It's moving a battleship around, turning it around. It's not going to turn around all the time, right? But
Sure.
the more that we start normalizing for our veteran officers, and just as important, normalizing for our new recruits that are coming in to have those conversations that I never had in the early 90s, then it starts to normalize it, for them and their families. I've had family members reach out, thankful for the wellness unit, that are just wives, significant others of officers that are here, that understand we care.
Yeah.
That when you come and we say you're part of our family, those aren't just words.
Mm-hmm.
You're part of our family. We understand your mental well-being. We understand the difficult job you do. We understand the positions that I have to put my officers in, because our responsibility is to protect the city of Dallas, but that comes at a cost. And so I have to do my part to ensure that my men and women have the resources available if they reach out, and for us to be proactive and reach out to them. We reach out to our officers after critical incidents all the time.
Yeah.
Officers throughout the department that our wellness unit has deputized as wellness. They could be from SWAT, robbery, homicide, that will call officers in patrol and ask them, are you doing okay?
Yeah.
And then knowing the referral systems to then refer them somewhere else.
Yeah. But what you're always fighting is that officer going, I'm okay.
Absolutely.
I'm all right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You fight that, but you got to continue to do it. We can't be reactive anymore. We have to be proactive. And so yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's going to be officers, that will not take the help. But there'll be one or two that will. For every 10, maybe there's 3 or 4 that will. Well, that's 3 or 4 that we possibly saved their lives, where otherwise we wouldn't have saved anybody, or we wouldn't have saved anybody's mental well-being. And obviously in this case, it's about saving a life because of the suicide, but that trauma affects our officers when they go home. It affects our officers as they're dealing with our community.
Yeah.
And so, you show me an officer who's mentally fit, who has asked for help and is mentally fit, I will show you a fantastic officer. And so, again, it comes down to officer safety, right? We have to really start melding them together, that the same officer safety that we preach to our officers out in the field with regards to dealing with violent suspects and protecting each other and risking our lives for each other has to mean the same thing to looking after each other with their mental well-being.
Yeah.
There is nobody that knows an officer's mental well-being more than their partners out in the field.
Right.
No one knows more than their partners out in the field.
Yeah. And you're agreeing to do these interviews today because I think more than a memo perhaps that you've sent out to your staff that they're going to watch this, they're going to hear this, you want them to see their chief talking about this?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, of course I want to do that. But again, this is not just a Dallas thing.
Oh, sure.
The leading cause of death of the American police officer is suicide. The leading cause of death is by our officers' own hands. So this is not just a Dallas thing. This is a national thing that, yes, we had a tragedy, but we have to be better. We have to be more proactive. We have to ensure that we can continue to normalize the trauma that our officers feel, and the fact that when they ask for help, we need to ensure that we have all the resources that are available for them. And there's a lot of people willing to help that are available for our officers to stay healthy and stay mentally fit for their officer safety, which is not simply being safe from a bullet or a knife or a fight out on the street.
Yeah. Well, maybe my last question, to what degree can you, with the family's permission, shed any light on what your officer we know at this point might have been going through? Do we know, and have you got any clearance from the family to even discuss that?
But we don't know. We don't know what he was going through right now.
Okay.
What I can say is there's probably half a dozen to a dozen individuals. I checked on the officer after the shooting. I check on all my officers after officer-involved shootings. Certainly, it's how are you doing? I didn't see signs, although like when after a shooting, officers can tell me they're fine all the time when they're not necessarily, right?
Sure.
But after that, there's probably a half a dozen to a dozen officers calling him multiple times to check on him that also didn't see any signs. And I'm sure those officers are struggling. Those officers that reached out and had these conversations, I'm sure they're struggling and they're going to need help. And those are some of the conversations that I know our teams had yesterday with our counselors and clinicians and experts that were here to have those conversations. Ultimately, in the end, I just plead any police officer, if they're going through trauma, to reach out for help. Help is there. And we just want to see our officers be healthy and lead great careers and be there for their families. I mean, I talk about being here for the department. I want them there for their families. This job can't define us. I want our officers well and healthy so they can live long for their families, and that's the most important thing.